I'm Evelyn Harper, 60 years old, and on the night before my son's wedding, I discovered something every mother dreads. My future daughter-in-law had slept with my husband. Seeing the messages and the photo on his phone, my heart just stopped. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I knew exactly what I had to do. Before we go any further, let me know in the comments where you're listening from, and don't forget to subscribe so you can follow me through the rest of these stories. The moment I found those messages, I just stood there, frozen in the middle of that luxury hotel suite Lawrence and I were staying in. The soft golden light from the bedside lamp spilled across the wedding schedule I'd just checked, and somehow it all looked dimmer now, as if the room itself wanted to highlight the betrayal sitting right there on my phone. The fact that Vanessa, the woman I once thought would be the perfect daughter-in-law, could deceive all of us, especially me after I'd spent my whole life teaching my son the value of honesty, it felt like I was dropping into a bottomless pit. And it wasn't just the act itself. What cut deepest was the planning behind it. Everything had been arranged so deliberately, the timing, the place, the way they made sure Daniel and I would never suspect a thing. A part of me wanted to scream to smash everything in sight, but I knew that would only create a messy, pointless chaos. I needed clarity, and then a cold, steady thought settled in. If they chose to betray me, they'll pay for it in a way everyone can see. I sat down, my hands still shaking, staring at the screen. Vanessa's messages didn't lie. Sweet words, cruel words, all tangled together with a photo no one could deny. Every detail showed they'd been planning this for weeks, and tonight was simply the last step. And Lawrence, the husband I once admired, had acted without shame, without an ounce of fear that any of this would surface. That double betrayal crushed every value I'd spent decades building in my family. Memories of Daniel as a little boy came flooding in. Me teaching him to respect people, to keep his word, to understand that honesty was the foundation of everything. I pictured him walking into his wedding tomorrow, excited, glowing, ready to start his life with the woman he loved, never imagining that such a rotten plan had been unfolding behind his back. My anger mixed with this deep, aching sadness. I'd lost my trust in Vanessa, and at the same time, I had to protect my son from the blow that could break him. I stood and began pacing the room, trying to gather myself. The cream-colored walls, those abstract paintings, all of it seemed to mock me. I pulled out my notebook and began writing down every detail, the timestamps, the messages, the photo, even the tiny things from recent days that suddenly made sense. To me, this wasn't just personal betrayal. It was a kind of emotional crime, a carefully crafted scheme meant to tear my family apart. Then an idea struck sharp, clear. If I kept this hidden, they'd believe they were safe, untouchable. But exposure, that was the one thing they could never prepare for. I wanted Daniel to see the truth. I wanted every guest to witness exactly who Vanessa and Lawrence really were. Not out of wild hatred, but out of the same sense of justice I'd lived by my whole life. When you harm a family, you face the consequences in front of the people you fooled. And as I thought back on the past week, all the little signs flickered into place. Vanessa suddenly so busy with work, though Daniel had no idea. Lawrence claiming he needed to meet a client in Palm Beach. Nothing but a cover. The strange perfume, the clumsy gestures at family dinners, their drifting eyes during small conversations. All pieces of a picture I could only see now. I sat again, exhaled slowly, reminding myself not to let emotion cloud my mind. I had to prepare, make a plan for tomorrow, not some messy revenge, but a clean, controlled reveal of the truth. Every detail I wrote down, every backup file I saved, it was all part of taking back control. And in the middle of all of it, something strange rose inside me. Anger, yes, but also focus. This would be a lesson not just for Vanessa and Lawrence, but for anyone who thinks deception can survive forever. And I knew one thing for certain: when tomorrow comes, none of us will walk away unchanged. I lifted my head and looked out the window. The lights of Miami glittered beneath the night sky. Half of my heart ached, but the other half burned with resolve. Every preparation, every calculation would turn this shock into strength. This was only the beginning, the very first step in protecting my son and exposing the truth they thought they'd buried forever. After standing there in that hotel suite, staring at that awful photo, I knew I couldn't let my emotions take over. My heart kept throbbing sharp and steady, but I needed a cold, clear mind. I picked up my phone and started backing up everything, the messages, the photos, even the metadata, every tiny timestamp. I've lived my whole life believing that evidence is the only thing that truly matters, and now it would be the one tool that let me take control back. I called Rachel Monroe, the lawyer I've trusted for years. She listened quietly as I explained, her voice calm, steady, almost comforting. "Evelyn, first thing, stay composed. Don't react impulsively. We'll build a plan so you control every part of this. They can't touch you if you know exactly what you're doing." I breathed a little easier. At least I wasn't walking into this storm alone. Then I went back through the last few weeks in my mind. Vanessa always had some work emergency, but now I could see those lies for what they were, well-polished diversions. Lawrence suddenly had late-night meetings, and now I knew exactly where he'd been. I remembered our family dinner last weekend, when Vanessa dropped her necklace and Lawrence bent down to pick it up, and the quick, secret look they exchanged. Little fragments of memory, each one transforming into undeniable evidence. I decided I needed a real plan, detailed, clean, legally safe, and devastatingly effective. Not violence, not chaos, but strategy. I opened my notebook and began outlining everything: data backups, duplicate files, the QR codes, the guest list, the method of distribution. Every line I wrote made me feel steadier, stronger, more in control than I had all evening. I also had to think about their psychology. If Vanessa or Lawrence sensed even a flicker of suspicion, they'd get cautious, maybe even destroy evidence. I needed them relaxed, convinced everything was normal. That meant keeping my face calm, my voice soft, my gestures familiar. I even planned a few ordinary moments for tomorrow: tea, small talk about flowers and table settings, casual smiles, just enough to lull them into thinking I hadn't seen a damn thing. One part of the plan excited me more than I'd like to admit. I set up a private, locked website, airtight security, where every piece of evidence would live. Messages, photos, timestamps, everything. That site would link to a QR code. And those QR codes would go to the wedding guests. One quiet scan, and they'd see the truth instantly. The idea made my pulse jump, part dread, part thrill. I felt like I was holding the key to a very specific kind of justice. I spent the next few hours preparing the printouts, trimming the QR cards, making sure everything looked elegant, innocent. No one could have guessed I was assembling a weapon, one wrapped in cardstock and subtlety, right in the middle of a celebration they thought would go smoothly. I tested each code, checked the page, loading speed confirmed, every image was clear, every message readable, ready. All the while I called Daniel, just to check on him, keeping my tone light, making sure he didn't sense the storm waiting behind tomorrow's door. I had to protect him from the first blow. A part of me wanted to scream to tell him everything right then. But no, he needed to see the truth in a controlled, safe way. Not through rumors, not through panic, through clarity. The hours passed, but I stayed sharp, focused. Every detail had to be perfect. My heartbeat was quick, but it wasn't fear anymore, it was resolve. A steady, pulsing reminder that tomorrow they would face the cost of what they'd done. And I would be right there, calm, collected, unshakable. Before bed, I sat by the window again, looking out over Miami's sparkling lights. The ocean breeze drifted in salty and soft, carrying the faint scent of jasmine from the gardens below. I inhaled deeply and reminded myself, truth and preparation are my allies. Tomorrow, when everything erupts, neither Vanessa nor Lawrence will have anywhere to hide, and I, with all my years, my instincts, my quiet strength, will be the one holding complete, undeniable control. The next morning, when I woke in that hotel room overlooking the beach in Fort Lauderdale, the tension and the resolve were still pulsing through every beat of my heart. I showered quickly, brushed my hair smooth, and slipped into my navy blazer dress, formal, elegant, and quietly powerful. My face looked calm in the mirror, almost serene. But inside my mind was replaying every step of the plan. Every move had to be exact. Every moment had to land perfectly. Daniel came into the room, my sweet boy buzzing with excitement about the ceremony, the flowers, the schedule. I smiled, gentle and steady. "Daniel, sweetheart, I'm so proud to be here with you today." Not even a whisper of what I knew showed on my face. He had no idea that this day, his wedding day, was moments away from becoming something none of us would ever forget. He trusted me completely, and I had to protect that trust until the truth revealed itself. At the hotel lobby, I checked the stack of printed QR codes one last time and handed them to Janet, the wedding coordinator. "Give one to each table right before the ceremony starts," I told her softly. She nodded. "Make it look natural. No fuss. When they scan them, they'll understand everything." Janet didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. She could see this wasn't anger, it was intention. On the way to the church, I spotted Vanessa glowing in her ivory dress, every inch the confident bride. And beside her, Lawrence straightening his tie like a man who'd slept soundly, not like someone who'd betrayed his wife the night before. A chill slid down my spine, but my heartbeat stayed steady, observant, controlled. This was the moment the trap was set and ready to snap. The ceremony began. I walked slowly down the long red aisle, holding the small bouquet Daniel had prepared for me. Guests started scanning their cards, curious smiles on their faces, thinking these were sweet wedding surprises, maybe a slideshow or a thank you note. But within seconds, curiosity turned into shock. I saw the first reaction, Carol, Vanessa's aunt. She scanned the card, and her eyes went wide, her hand flying to her mouth. Across the church, whispers rippled. Phones tilted discreetly toward neighbors, then not so discreetly. A quiet murmur swelled into a tense electric hush. Vanessa noticed it. Her smile wavered. Her eyes flicked toward the guests, then to her phone, then back to the guests again. Lawrence stiffened, sensing something unraveling around him. I stepped closer to Daniel, squeezed his hand, and kept watching the room as it shifted. Perfectly, exactly as I had planned. When it came time for the vows, I knew the moment had arrived. I walked up to the front. Calm, steady voice, low but clear. "My dear friends, there's a truth I discovered last night." Silence fell like a curtain. Every eye turned toward me. I lifted my phone, the evidence glowing on the screen. My future daughter-in-law, Vanessa, betrayed my family with Lawrence, my husband. A soft scream, sharp and quick, came from somewhere in the crowd. Vanessa's face drained of color. Lawrence's mouth hung open, stunned. The guests were frozen, then suddenly alive with whispers, gasps, shock spreading like wildfire. I continued, voice firm and controlled. "The proof is here. Clear, undeniable. They believed this secret would stay buried. But today the truth stands in the open." Guests leaned over their phones, scrolling through messages, looking at photos, their faces tightening with disbelief, then disgust. Some whispered her name. Some stared at Lawrence like he was a stranger. And then I watched Daniel, my son, pick up a card, scan it, and see the truth for himself. His eyes shimmered, hurt, yes, but no longer blind, no longer deceived. I wrapped my hand around his, and my look said what I didn't need to speak aloud: "I will always protect you." Vanessa tried to speak, her lips trembling, but I stayed silent, letting the truth do the talking. Lawrence's whole body shook. There was nothing either of them could say. Not one word to defend the indefensible. And there I stood, calm, rooted, powerful in a way that surprised even me. Every ounce of pain from the night before had crystallized into purpose. By the end of the ceremony, Vanessa and Lawrence were isolated, left standing in a circle of whispers and judgment. Daniel held on to me. Guests murmured, shaken, stunned, unable to look away from the truth they'd just witnessed. And I realized something. As I stood there watching the wreckage unfold, this wasn't just about revenge. It was about protecting my family, protecting the values I'd raised my son on, protecting the life he deserved. And in that moment, I knew my plan from the night before had succeeded perfectly. The next few moments stretched out like they would never end. The air in the church was thick, almost suffocating. I could hear every gasp, every stifled sob from the guests. Vanessa stood frozen, pale as porcelain, her eyes wide with a mix of shock and terror. Lawrence gripped her hand as if my very presence had shattered them completely. A few guests could no longer contain themselves. Whispered murmurs spread like a rising tide, moving from row to row. I watched carefully, noting every glance, every subtle gesture, and felt a strange sense of relief. Every hour of planning, every sleepless thought, every meticulous detail had led to this, the truth laid bare before family, friends, colleagues. I stepped forward, standing firmly in the center aisle, my voice clear. "Vanessa, Lawrence, you thought no one would ever know what happened last night. But here now, everything must be said." Vanessa tried to hide the trembling of her hands beneath her wedding gown, but I could see it. Lawrence bowed his head as if he wished the ground would swallow him. He couldn't. Guests began reading the messages, seeing the photo, unable to hide their shock. Uncle Harold shouted, "This is unbelievable!" Vanessa's sister broke into tears, turning to her mother in despair. My own mother, Martha, sat in the front row, eyes glistening with tears, yet her face radiated power. The scene stung with pain, yet filled me with a quiet triumph. I stepped further into the aisle, taking the priest's microphone, voice steady, commanding, "We are witnessing something I never imagined. Betrayal on the eve of a momentous day. No one can justify such actions." My words reverberated through the church, mixing with tense silence and occasional sighs. Vanessa tried to speak, but no words came out. Lawrence, in a last-ditch effort, whispered Evelyn, "Please." I shook my head, voice calm but full of authority. "No, Lawrence. Nothing you say can undo what you've done. The evidence is here, and everyone has seen it." The guests murmured louder now, some taking screenshots, others filming and sharing online in real time. I glanced at Daniel. My son's eyes were wet, but his expression was radiant, seeing the truth for the first time, free from deception. I held his hand, letting my gaze send a message: I will always protect you, and justice will be done. Vanessa looked to her mother, lips trembling, eyes pleading. Her mother could only shake her head, disbelief written across her face. Lawrence stepped back slowly, his face pale, sweat glistening on his brow. I felt the weight of their collapse in every gesture. They were undone. And in that moment, every ounce of pain, every careful plan from the night before, found its meaning. I turned to the full congregation, voice strong and unwavering. Today is not just a ceremony, it is a reminder that truth will always prevail. And those who deceive will face the consequences in front of the people who matter most in their lives. When I finished, Vanessa broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. Lawrence lowered his head, silent. The guests buzzed with chatter, some comforting my mother, others whispering to each other. No one could salvage the moment. I felt balance return inside me. The preparation, the clarity, and the power of truth had kept everything under control. Finally, I looked at Daniel and spoke softly. "Son, today we've learned an important lesson. Family, trust, honesty are things nothing can replace." He nodded, tears rolling down his cheeks, yet a smile shining through. In that moment, I knew our lives had turned a page, stronger, fairer, and finally free from those who betrayed us. After the truth was revealed in the church, the echo of that moment lingered in my mind. The mix of pain and release still pulsed within me. Vanessa and Lawrence left quickly, faces pale, moving like two ghosts. Guests were still murmuring, some gathering to discuss what they had just witnessed. I went to Daniel and held him close. In his eyes I saw both sorrow and relief. He was no longer deceived, and the truth had preserved our family. Immediately after the ceremony, I contacted my lawyer, Claire Donovan. She arrived within hours, preparing legal documents to ensure that all of Daniel's and my assets, contracts, and rights were fully protected. Vanessa, though never officially my daughter-in-law, lost any potential claims from the wedding. Lawrence, my husband, completely lost both trust and credibility in the family and in his career. Claire emphasized that the preparation and evidence I had secured the night before had become an extremely powerful legal tool. In the following days, the consequences unfolded swiftly and decisively. Lawrence was fired from his company within a week, and his reputation in real estate crumbled completely. Longtime clients canceled contracts, partners turned away, and the image he had built over 30 years vanished in an instant. Vanessa had to leave her prestigious marketing firm, and her family faced public shame in the very social circles they once prided themselves on. My mother, Martha, endured the painful days with strength. She said that what happened with my husband and future daughter-in-law was unforgivable, yet she acknowledged that justice had been served. We spent time together, sharing thoughts, tears, and plans for the future. Through it all, I realized that true power doesn't come from revenge. It comes from standing by your values and protecting the people you love. Daniel and I began moving into our beachfront villa, where we could live in peace, free from the shadows of the past. We planned our future together, and Daniel started getting involved in community activities while learning business management skills from me. I realized that through all the losses we had learned the real value of trust, honesty, and family. Over the next month, I decided to write everything down, not for revenge, but to document the truth and the lessons learned. I recorded every detail, every tense moment, every strategy I had used to protect my family. I realized that this story was more than a personal tragedy. It was a lesson for anyone who believes in honesty and family values. Then an unexpected piece of news arrived. Claire informed me that thanks to my careful preparation, Daniel and I could sue Lawrence for family sabotage with an extremely high chance of winning. We considered it carefully but ultimately decided against pursuing it to avoid more pain. The truth and the consequences they had already faced were justice enough. Finally, I opened my heart to a new life. I accepted a position with a nonprofit in Miami where I could help families facing similar hardships. Daniel studied diligently, matured quickly, and always had me by his side. We lived peacefully, never forgetting the painful lesson life had taught us. The most powerful moment came when Daniel and I walked hand in hand along the beach at sunset, the golden light shimmering across the water. I realized that truth and courage could bring liberation, and no betrayal, no matter how devastating, could take away our right to live happily and in peace. We had won not just by exposing the truth, but by standing firm, reclaiming control of our lives and rebuilding trust. This story, though it began with shocking betrayal, ended with strength, justice, and a fresh start. Vanessa and Lawrence lost everything, while Daniel and I found a fulfilling life, strong family bonds, and a wide-open future. I learned that sometimes the biggest shocks can lead to the greatest opportunities. If you found this story compelling and want to see more emotionally charged family dramas, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. I truly appreciate you following along, taking the time to watch and sharing your thoughts. Every view, every comment helps keep this channel alive, sharing more dramatic stories like ours. Thank you so much.